Hello, everybody, and welcome to our fourth episode
Yes,
of
fourth.
the SEC Tavern Talk. We are here today with J.R. Horsley. Give us a shout, Horsley.
That's not J.R. Horsley.
And who are we talking to?
J.R. Phillips.
Phillips. Okay. So many J.R.'s in the group. I don't understand. J.R. Phillips. Tell us a little bit about yourself, J.R.
I'm J.R. Phillips. I have no idea who J.R. Horsley is. I'm an Auburn grad.
Okay.
I work with an Alabama fan, and she's an Alabama fan. And every time we have someone come into the store, she's like, "Roll Tide! I'm an Alabama fan. He's an Auburn fan." I always say, "I'm an Auburn graduate. Thank you very much." So,
not much school spirit, I see.
Exactly. I graduated from Auburn, so that means I'm the Auburn representative today. I am an admin for the Baptist Sports page, and all we do is talk about basketball over there. And I'm a moderator at the Baptist Review.
Sweet.
And I don't like
Sounds
Jared
good.
Stidham.
Well,
that was quick.
I mean, let me get this out of the way right now. It makes complete sense that us all being Baptists, that we can never start on time.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is accurate. And not only that, we always sit in the back so nobody notices.
And we know, and we always go overtime too.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Moving on, I think our sound is going crazy.
No, I think
but
that's
moving
just
on,
you.
let's go ahead to this week's recaps for last week's games. JB, will you kick us off with what you saw from Arkansas last weekend?
Well, I saw a W, so that's good. Well, I mean, Arkansas, they had a pretty weak day offensively. They did dominate the time of possession. They rushed for almost 200 yards with my boy Rakeem Boyd leading the way at 99 yards. Ty Story was out, our starting quarterback, so they went with a true freshman. So that's why we're a little bit shaky on offense. He didn't do bad though for his first start. I mean, he went 10 for 16, 124 yards passing. It's not great, but it's not bad. A touchdown and one interception, but that was on his first drive. True freshman. He settled down a little bit after that. Cole Kelly came in during short yardage situations and got us a few first downs, including one 20-yard run. I love watching that big dude run. Where we really shined, and like we always do, and I talk about it every week, was our defense was stellar, man. Santos Ramirez had 10 tackles. Dre Greenlaw had 9. Sosa Akeem had 7, plus 3.5 tackles for a loss. And Ryan Pulley also grabbed another interception. Dude's been killing it this year. As a team, we had 6 sacks and 0 points allowed. Yes, we shut them out. I know it was Tulsa. But, yes, a one-win team. But they are better than their record shows. They've actually played pretty close to some good teams out there, including losing by 7 to Texas, which is a top 10 team. But the important thing is we snapped a 6-game losing streak. So hopefully that will springboard us into having a successful second half of the season. So.
Okay. Awesome. James, did Texas A&M play this week?
No, we had our bye week. We're coming up on Mississippi State this week.
Okay, well, how's the punter looking in practice?
I haven't been watching practice videos. I've got other things, like failing a calculus class that I'm doing. So
you're not watching your boy practice, man? Come on.
Maybe this upcoming week, since I've got so much guff for it.
All right.
Yeah.
JR, have you got anything for us for Auburn?
Yes. Auburn won this week, 31-16. We beat Ole Miss. Ole Miss is now 5-3, and so are we. I don't think Ole Miss is as good as their 5-3 record. I was impressed by Bobby Whitlow, but I've been impressed by him all year, except for his inability to cross the goal line with the football. He has now fumbled going into the end zone twice this week. Our defense had 7 sacks, and we were led by Nick Coe with 3.5 sacks, and Marlon, and then I lost. And then Deshaun Davis had 13 tackles, and I think Deshaun Davis might be my favorite Auburn player this year. So
awesome. Good to see Auburn doing well. That's one of our best wins of the season. So I'm glad that they're doing well. Our best win of the season came against Georgia. What you got for us, Rob?
Well, we also had a bye week, so we're just gearing up for Florida. We had
all right.
Florida and us both had a double bye week. So,
all right, sounds good. So, just gonna go ahead and run through the scores from around the conference from this past week. Like JB said, he didn't lie. Arkansas did actually shut out an opponent. They did shut out Tulsa, and they win 23-0. Auburn goes to Ole Miss and beats them 31-16 in a game that's closer than maybe it should have been. Alabama breaks my heart and beats Tennessee by more than 28 points and made me a liar. I thought that the blowout would be about 27 points, but no, it's 37 points. Alabama just absolutely destroys Tennessee. Memphis travels to Missouri and loses in a great basketball game, 33-65. Mississippi State comes to Death Valley, and LSU shuts the door on their offense. LSU wins 19-3, and in that game, pretty controversial call toward the end. Devin White is flagged for targeting, and that means that he will have to sit the first half of the Alabama game in 2 weeks. So we'll see how that goes. And then Kentucky plays against Vanderbilt and beats them 14-7. Now, moving on, let's go ahead and get into the big discussion point for this week. Our big discussion this week is going to come surrounding the Auburn situation. What's going on there with their football team? How are they going to compete in the coming years with Gus Malzahn at the helm? Is 5-3 good enough, or do they need to make some changes at the coaching position? What would the buyout be? What do you think, JR?
I think I'm a little bit different than most Auburn fans. Like, 5-3 is not where Auburn would want to be right now this year, but we are like 3 tackles away from being 6-1, like where you thought we should be. And I think Gus Malzahn's getting a lot of slack right now, but I mean, I'm waiting for someone besides Auburn or besides Alabama to win the SEC West. Like, we just came off who was in the playoffs, Georgia, who we beat, Central Florida, who went undefeated. And it, depending on like if we want to say they're good or not good this year, they were decent enough last year. And LSU, who is a good team, who has 4 losses. I'm a fan of Gus Malzahn. I'm a fan of our football under him, but I'm in a very minority of Auburn fans when it comes to that.
Okay, well, we caught about half of that. I think that I got the heart of what you're saying, that Auburn isn't doing maybe as well as some people had hoped, but their record really isn't as bad as it seems. They're only a couple of tackles away from winning some close games against some really tough opponents, and they're not looking that bad. So let me ask you this. Is Malzahn the coach of the future for Auburn?
Yes. I have seen, unless you can provide some sort of.
We lost
I'm
you
going to
again.
go with Gus Malzahn. Can you hear me?
Hey, JR.
Yeah.
We lost you twice now. Are you on mobile data or are you on Wi-Fi?
I'm on mobile, but I can go to Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Wi-Fi would probably work better just because we've lost you twice now within 2 minutes. So.
Okay. Can you get me?
We can hear you. We cannot see you.
Okay, well, while we're getting this straightened out,
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got you.
All right, we got you.
Okay.
All right. So what were you saying about Malzahn being the coach of the future?
I was saying that I am a fan of Gus Malzahn being our coach as of right now because I can't think of anybody who could be better. I've seen enough SEC coaches get fired and people get hired that have done terrible jobs, like Brett Bielema. Just anybody that goes to South Carolina for me to still be okay with Gus Malzahn. I mean, we have 2 SEC West championships under him and an SEC championship, and we played for a national title in 5 years. So as an Auburn fan, I don't know what else I'd ask for.
Okay, that's fair. It's a little upsetting to hear you throw shade on Steve Spurrier like that. But
I love Steve Spurrier. He led South Carolina to their only 2 11-win seasons ever.
yeah, that is true. And he also made probably the best comments about Auburn that have ever been made. JB, what do you think about the Malzahn situation in Auburn?
Yeah, I've never I've never been big on Malzahn. I think y'all know that. I think I mentioned on the show before when he was on the Hill, man. I mean, there's just a lot of drama. He may have grown up with that as far as having to have control, but I don't really think so because for a while there he wouldn't even let his offensive coordinator call plays, which he had that problem with when he was at Arkansas. He was the OC and he wasn't able to call plays. But anyway, it's just kind of funny to see it turn around on him. I feel like his system, if he was able to adapt, I know you're not big on Jarrett Stidham, but I mean, he's not the type of quarterback that Gus needs for this offense. So I feel like if he was a great coach, he would adapt his game plan to accommodate for Stidham, who is probably their best quarterback. I mean, this is their best option. But he's not the kind of guy that's going to run that RPO offense that Gus wants to run. So he should adapt his system the way Nick Saban has done several times. So.
I will agree with you 100% that Gus Malzahn is not a great head coach, but I'd love Nick Saban to come down to Auburn.
Be careful before you make that deal with the devil.
Yeah.
Right. Well, James, speaking of deals with the devil, as someone who had to suffer under the Sumlin era at Texas A&M, what do you think about the Malzahn situation?
I haven't paid too close attention to it, but in the little bit of researching that I was doing this morning, I just think that they're having a rough season. As you saw yourself, it was a very close game with LSU. It was a 1-point difference. And then they still managed to win a couple games, and their downfall came against Mississippi State, who has, I believe, the number 6 defense in the nation right now. So they are a hard-hitting defense. Their offense isn't very powerful, but they are a hard-hitting defense. And if I read correctly, Auburn had a few injuries going into that game, and it was just the perfect storm. And Mississippi State came out on top, and that just really kickstarted the spiral. I haven't seen enough out of Gus Malzahn to believe that he is another Kevin Sumlin who doesn't know how to coach and develop players as people. And I don't foresee second half collapses being the norm. And while they are struggling and they did lose to Tennessee, they still have the possibility to pull something out. And I wouldn't start to get worried unless this happens next season as well.
Okay, that's fair. Rob, let's get your 2 cents. Because we all know you want to see Auburn do well.
Not at all. I'm with JB. I'm not a big fan of him. Personally, as far as the head coach, I don't know that I don't know too much about him. I would say I don't think they're going to continue to do as bad as they're seemingly doing. The Georgia game is going to be. I don't think we'll roll over them as some Georgia fans might think because it's Auburn and that's always a tough game. I think that I agree. I think next year will be a good barometer for him. How they finish this season and how they do next season. That it's a big buyout. I don't think they're ready to get rid of him just yet. I also think it's a little premature. I think a lot of SEC schools are quick to jump on the hot seat bandwagon, so to speak. They're quick to, we lost a couple games, or this is a bad loss, and everybody wants their head coach's head on a platter. It's like I mean, you look at how hard it is to play in the SEC every week, regardless of who you're playing. You got to come out and battle. You can't take anybody too lightly. And I think, Auburn's having struggles. And I think part of it is that they're losing confidence. It's not all – I wouldn't blame it all on Malzahn. Although, I mean, part of it is him. So that's what I'd say on that.
Okay, that's fair.
Hey, real quick, I do need to say, I forgot to mention earlier, my biggest thing with Malzahn is, Auburn, they continue to, like Kevin Sumlin, they continue to get like 4-star and 5-star talent year after year after year, and there's got to be a problem there if you're struggling this season and you lose to Tennessee of all people, when you have a top 10 recruiting class or top 15 recruiting class, and I mean you shouldn't be struggling like this in year 6. I mean he's been their coach for 6 years. He should have this all figured out by now. I mean, but it's just he's getting the players, but he's just not able to use them, which is weird because there's no excuse in year 6, in my opinion. But,
well, and what I say to that is I didn't realize the stats from Georgia's recruiting class as far as the talent. I watching the Dog Nation podcast, I saw that I think it was something – it was a really low number. Out of 70 recruits over the last 3 recruiting classes, it was something like 16 or something like that players had started 10 games or at least 10 games, which is a depressing number when you really get down to it. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say that Kirby can't develop talent. I definitely think he can, but I do think that's a number of concern. And so to your point about Malzahn, I think Kirby's still got a lot of work to do with his teams and his recruits. I mean, you can bring in. We had class of 16 was, I believe it was the number 6 class in the nation. If I'm not mistaken. 17 class was number 3, and 18 was number 1 in the country. And a lot of those guys haven't developed yet. I think they will, but it's just slow going. And Kirby's still building his team, but I referenced that only to hit on what JB said about Malzahn. I think it's comparable to an extent. So I think sometimes it's tough when you're playing the SEC, man.
Yeah, that is true.
I mean, I do want to stick up for Gus a little bit. Like we're coming off a season where like we had 10 wins and 4 losses, and 3 of our 4 losses were the teams in the college football playoffs. It's not like, I mean, this year has been bad in the sense that we lost to Tennessee, but we lost to LSU by a field goal, like a top 10 team by a field goal. Like we lost to Mississippi State, and there's 2 touchdowns that were inches away from not being touchdowns that could have went either way. It's not like Auburn's going out there and losing 35-0 like we did under Gene Chizik. Like I've lived through Gene Chizik. I can live through Gus Malzahn.
That's fair. What I will say is I don't like Malzahn as a coach myself. He reminds me a lot of Les Miles in that I think that he's an excellent recruiter, but if he doesn't have a player to fit his system, it doesn't matter. He still has the system in place. So, for example, you had Les Miles trot out Brandon Harris or Anthony Davis a few years ago, and they're good, or yeah, and they're good in their own right. They're great quarterbacks, but they are not pro style offense quarterbacks. And he sticks them under center and expects them to run the offense well, and it just doesn't happen. And I see sort of the same thing happening in reverse with Jared Stidham in Auburn. He strikes me as more of a pro style quarterback. He's kind of not the most quick, not the most athletic guy on the field, but he's being asked to run a lot of read option plays, a lot of this stuff. And I don't like his scheming. I think that as a recruiter, he is doing an excellent job. As a coach, I think that he's more of a figurehead. And if he's not allowing his OC to call plays, that's a big deal. I haven't seen that or heard that, but if that's true, that's kind of a big deal. And a lot of coaching is winning the close games. So we can say this year that that they lost a 1-point game to LSU, who is a playoff caliber team. And they lose to Mississippi State, who has a playoff caliber defense. And they lose to Tennessee, which is a fluke, right? We can say that. But great coaches come in and they win the close games and they beat the teams they're supposed to beat. And that's why Alabama is considered this great juggernaut, because they don't lose games they're supposed to win, and they don't let the close games fall the other way. So
Miss.
Do what?
They lost 2 years in a row to Ole Miss. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, 2 years in a row to a cheating Ole Miss that got Hugh Freeze fired because of it.
Just saying they were supposed to win that, to your point.
Yeah, they were.
Not necessarily, though, because they had a top 5 recruiting class. So, yeah, I mean, they were competitive in that sense. They just they weren't coached well, and they kind of fell apart at the end. So, I mean, that was a legit team they lost to.
Right. But to Rob's point, Alabama should win that game. But the truth is, the examples of them losing games they should win are minuscule. Like, you have to go back a couple years to find those games. Whereas teams like LSU, it's like last year you lost to Troy. Like,
wow.
Yeah.
That's fair.
What you got, Jared?
I think we if the question is Gus Malzahn Nick Saban, like that's an absolute no. Like no.
Okay.
But none of us have a coach that's Nick Saban. Like, let's be honest about that. It's like, but the question is, as an Auburn fan, am I happy?
But Orgeron is close.
West? But like, as an Auburn fan, am I happy with winning the SEC West 2 times in 6 years? Like, absolutely. Like, find me another SEC coach that's done that so far.
Right.
Besides Nick Saban. That's true.
Yeah. I'm with you there. And when I say Orgeron is close, I legitimately mean that. I think that the production that he's had is pretty close to Nick Saban's production when he first arrived at Alabama. When Nick Saban first arrives at Alabama, they have a very mediocre season, and they drop a game to ULM. Right? That's how Nick Saban started his career at Alabama, and then they progress into the behemoth that they are now. And I don't know. I see a lot of similarities with the way that LSU is progressing toward that. They're trending up in the years that Orgeron has been there, and I don't know. I like my coach.
Let's not kid ourselves. Remember that Auburn in 2008 fired our head coach. In 2009 hired Gene Chizik, lost some games we shouldn't win. We lost some games we shouldn't lose. 2010 we won the national championship. 2012 we get shut out by Alabama and Georgia. Like a 2-season sample size. I don't know is that good.
Right.
Ashton, I love your coach too in interviews.
Yes, I do too.
His interviews are gold.
He is media gold, man.
Yes, he is.
He's like the opposite of Bush
Josh.
Jones.
He's
the opposite of Bush Jones.
He's the exact opposite of Bush Jones. But another thing that I'll say to Orgeron's credit is he really does legitimately bleed purple and gold. And I don't know that can be said for many SEC coaches. Like Nick Saban is a good coach, but he could do what he's doing at any school. He already did. He did it at LSU. Wow. He's doing it at Alabama. He doesn't really bleed his team's colors. Like he doesn't buy into the whole Alabama is the greatest thing. Orgeron does. He's like, LSU is it. And I love that because he brands himself as the coach at LSU. Like, come to LSU because we're going to do things because it's LSU. And I think that's to his credit.
I think there could be an argument made for Kirby on that. I mean, he played at Georgia.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So there's two.
Hey, real quick, I gotta ask, who is better to watch interviewed? Is it Ed Orgeron or Jeremy Pruitt?
Oh.
Well, Jeremy Pruitt has never been photoshopped to be the Cookie Monster, so I'm going to go ahead and say Orgeron.
What?
Orgeron wins.
Hey,
I don't know, man. Jeremy Pruitt doesn't even know what asparagus is. So I don't understand that.
But JR, I have been giving this some thought. With the way things are looking in Oakland, I think that Auburn might be able to get John Gruden in a year or two.
Oh yeah. John Gruden might be the worst football coach of all time.
I don't know. I would love to see like what the next few years hold for Oakland. It's going to be fun to watch because man, that's just it looks like a train wreck happening in slow motion, but we'll see.
You remember how much Tennessee wanted him?
Yes.
I was like, why?
Big time. Clay Travis was like fighting for him on his show.
He's like hadn't coached a football game in 10 years, and they're like, here's a 10-year contract, millions of dollars. Like I had the credentials John Gruden did at this point.
He hasn't won a Super Bowl. I will say that.
He's won two. But let's go ahead and say that Malzahn is the coach of the future. Okay?
Let's do it.
We got it. So, how many years before Auburn is competing for another national title? Because ultimately that's the goal. Do you think that next year they're in the mix, or are we a couple years from it, or what's happening with Auburn in the next few years? What do you project over the future of the Malzahn era?
If I had to over the next 5 years, I would be pleasantly surprised if we had 2 10-win seasons.
Oh wow!
Yeah. I mean, we are matched up with Georgia as our cross conference rival. We had to play Alabama and we had to play LSU.
That's fair.
That is fair.
That's fair.
And I
like hearing that from an Auburn
fan. Of the four programs, Auburn is probably the worst of those four. To be honest,
gosh, music to my ears.
Yeah, can we just throw this? Yeah, go ahead, keep going.
Like of the four, like we're probably the four. So if we have some sort of magical season where we return a kick or tip a pass or end up winning a game that we shouldn't win and we win the SEC, I'm fine with it. I can't think of a viable option to replace Gus Malzahn at this point. I literally don't want to be Arkansas.
Come on, man. There's John Gruden. But
okay,
direct shot.
Can I just throw this out there? I'm so happy that we have a sensible Auburn fan on here who gets it that they're not Alabama.
Yeah, that's a contradiction in terms.
Yeah, exactly. and they're not Georgia, and they're not LSU. So I mean,
And they're not Arkansas.
Oh, they're not Arkansas. Yeah, I'm a sensible Arkansas fan. I have no high hopes. I mean,
The jury's still out on that, JB.
huh? Yeah, okay, whatever. I don't expect 10-win seasons. Maybe once every 5 or 6 years, which has typically happened, but it didn't under Brett Bielema because it was Brett Bielema. But yeah,
Right.
I'm just happy to hear. Like, most Auburn fans are like wanting to be Alabama, and that drives me crazy. I was like, you're not going to be the biggest dynasty in the history of college football.
Unless
It's
you
just not
could-
going to happen.
But
No,
Nick Saban
especially
decided
when
break
we
my
had to
heart.
play Georgia every year.
Yeah.
Well, I'm interested to see how Auburn's class for next year is going to turn out. They stole Owen Papo from us, and I'm still wanting to kill that kid for choosing Auburn over Georgia, but I'm hoping we can flip him. He says he's pretty strongly committed to Auburn, but he's supposed to be the game-changing recruit for next year. Like, so many people are big on him, and I'm curious to see how the classes play out for 19. But so it should be an interesting year. I think it's always when Auburn plays Georgia, it's always one can be heavily favored, and it doesn't. I mean, I never have full confidence that we're going to win that game. So
Right.
Isn't that the South's oldest rivalry?
Deep
Yeah.
South's
The
oldest
Deep
rivalry.
South's oldest rivalry, yeah.
And we
Whatever
played
that
two
means.
very miserable football games last year.
So JR, let me ask you this: would you be on board with my idea to go like basketball and get rid of the divisions, so that way we wouldn't have
Yeah.
locked schedules every year?
Yes, I would. Like, please, can I play like Missouri and Tennessee and Vanderbilt like in a year?
Well, I mean, you would still rotate everything, but it would just be you wouldn't have the locked opponents, so the West wouldn't be griping about how they have to play the same teams every year, and then talk about how the East is weak and plays nobody. I mean, you'd all be playing
Hey,
each other.
I don't know who's
Well-
griping. The East is weak, and they do play nobody. But I'm not griping that we get a shot at dethroning Alabama every year. James,
You should
I
grab
hear-
about that.
How many Auburn fans, JR, you know this, how many Auburn fans have talked about how weak Alabama's schedule and this and that and all these other SEC teams compared to Auburn's schedule is weak? I've heard it all this season. And
I talk about it all the time.
right.
Like, yeah, I mean, we played. How did our schedule go? Like, Georgia, Alabama, Georgia, Central Florida, Washington. Like, that was
Okay, so
that's a good- and
I hear Tennessee fans talking about how they want to play Alabama every year. They're being honest with themselves. They don't want to play Alabama every year.
Mm-mm.
now they want
That's
to play
like
Auburn.
That's the worst. That's the
it's the biggest joke of a rivalry game out there.
exactly.
But
I mean,
to
freaking
the
Bush
point,
Jones was smoking a cigar and making fun of Tennessee. Like, come on.
to the point about Alabama having a weak schedule, Alabama's average opponent's FPI rating is 64.
Yeah, but you get rid of the divisions and you don't.
Yeah, but
it evens it up.
okay. In fairness, Alabama has the easiest schedule in the SEC West because they don't have to play Alabama.
Hey, man, I've said that before too. Like,
That's-
they don't have an Alabama on their schedule.
That's fair, but they don't even have as tough a schedule to this point in the season as Texas.
Right. To add to all that, if we got rid of the divisions, I mean, then you wouldn't know who was the local champion. You know, you'd have Texas over here playing a whole bunch of teams that, you know, like Texas Tech, Texas A&M, Oklahoma never play, and then you've got Texas A&M playing a bunch of teams that none of the other guys ever play, and so it's all, oh yeah, we're the best in this area. No, we're the best in this area. We're the best in the state. Yada this, yada that, etc. But you have those divisions, and you can say definitively, or pretty definitively, who's the best of their conference and of their division. And if we had a proper playoff with 8 or 16 teams in it, then I think we could decide who was the best, and everybody would get a chance to play outside their division and outside their conference every year. And it would mean something. And
Right.
I know we covered it, but we're coming back to it because you guys are talking about getting rid of divisions. And I don't think that's the way to go.
Well, see, here's my argument against that. I think when you've got teams like Alabama and LSU, okay, well, only one of them can go to the SEC championship when they might be the two best teams in the conference. You can't make that definitive argument because they don't get to play each other for the SEC championship.
LSU and Alabama are absolutely the two best teams in the conference this year. At me, I don't even care. Let's switch gears now, and let's go ahead and don't we have some questions that we need to answer?
Yes.
So let's go ahead and answer some questions for the next segment. What's our first question? I know that we have a UCF question, and I don't know where that is.
I know what it is. I can start.
Okay, so no, we're gonna save that one for last.
Okay.
If you don't mind, James, I'm gonna start it and answer the actual question, and then let you fill in all your stats. That way we can kind of tag team that.
Okay. That's fine. But let's go ahead and get to the other questions first. Okay. Kyle Warnock asks, do people around the SEC, outside of Arkansas that is, think that Chad Morris will make Arkansas a top 25 program again? And this is Ashton's own commentary, hashtag make Arkansas great again. What are y'all's thoughts on this? Not JB.
I honestly, we down here at Texas A&M, Chad Morris is a former Aggie. And if I remember correctly, he was offensive coordinator for Dabo at Clemson for a season or two before he went on to head coach at SMU. And we did have a lot of Aggies clamoring for him to come down here before the higher-ups made the decision to go with Jimbo Fisher, which I was one of them initially, but I'm glad that that didn't happen. I will say this, though. It's rare that you see a team start off as poorly as Arkansas did and consistently get better throughout the season, consistently step their play up. Even if it doesn't necessarily show it in the score or in the outcome of the game, you can tell by the way that they're playing. You can tell by the statistics that they're putting up. And I do think that if you give them 5 years, Arkansas will be a force to be reckoned with. I don't think they'll necessarily be an Alabama or an LSU or a Georgia, but I do think that they will be a significant program in the SEC once again within the next 5 years.
Okay. JR, what you got?
Arkansas just has such a big hill to climb. Like, they had to, be a top 25 program, you have to win, 8 or 9 games? And, you go down the SEC schedule with Arkansas and pick out 8 or 9 wins for them every year for, say, the next 5 years would be hard for me to do. It's not, again, that's not saying Arkansas is a bad team or he's a bad coach. It's just you had to play Alabama every year, LSU every year, Auburn every year, Mississippi State every year.
Right. Man, Texas
A&M going to get better.
No love in your lists.
Oh yeah, A&M every year they got Jimbo Fisher. That's a lot to climb, and I don't know enough about him to say either way, but that's a lot to climb.
So we got James saying yes, I believe, and JR saying no. Rob, be their tiebreaker.
I don't know much to say on Chad Morris. I mean, I don't really know that much about him, to be honest. I think Arkansas, they're a good program. I think that they have the potential to really climb back up. It's going to take some time, though. I don't think it's going to be in the next couple of years, just because of what they have in front of them. Playing in the West and just having a lot of recruiting battles with their fellow SEC teams to beat against. I think if they can have some good classes and maybe develop that talent well, then maybe if he's there in 4 or 5 years, they might challenge the West, but it'll be interesting to see.
Right. All right. Well, I am going to finish us off with a solid maybe. I think that Chad Morris may bring them back to relevancy if he stays there for longer than 10 or 11 or 20 years. I think that Arkansas, like JR said, has such a tremendous Hildeglamm that, like he said, it go through Arkansas's schedule for the next 5 years and pick out 8 or 9 wins a season. That's if they can do it, man, that's awesome. I don't see it happening though, and I don't think that Chad Morris actually survives long enough for it to take effect. Right. So let's say 4 years in, when he's 7-5 is his best record. What does the fan base say? What does the boosters say? He might set them on the right track. But if we're going through the alphabet, he's maybe the letter G, and Z is the final destination. And I don't see him surviving to Z. So with that said, we have 3 no's and 1 yes. JB, what do you think about all this as an Arkansas guy?
The question wasn't for me, but I will say, I've seen 10-win seasons at Arkansas. I was there to witness it when we had Darren McFadden. All it really takes is a game changer like Darren, which happens every so often. It takes something like that, or Cam Newton, or Johnny Football, or like y'all all had them. They come around every so often, but I feel like Chad Morris is the kind of guy that if you look at what he's done, I mean, he was at Clemson for several years, and Clemson was a dying program that Dabo was about to lose his job. He was in Gus Malzahn's shoes before he hired Chad Morris as his offensive coordinator. And he brought his system in there, and he recruited guys like Deshaun Watson and, and to build that system up. And they still run that same system that he implemented there, and that took him to a national championship right after he left. I mean, it's not like I just feel like he is going to be the guy that will turn the program around. And he did it at Clemson. He did it at SMU. I feel like he's going to do it at Arkansas. Will they be in Alabama or Georgia? No, probably not. But, I mean, they're not going to be in LSU either. But, LSU's a rivalry. We can beat them. Like, I've seen a 4-7 team, Arkansas team, beat LSU before when they were, vying for a national championship. And Ashton has too. So it is what it is. That's not a game. That's not a game that matters how good we are. I do feel like that we will be a legit top 25 team. They're going to give him 5 years. I have no doubt. They gave Brett Bielema 5 years. They're going to give him 5 years.
Right. Okay. So JB says that Arkansas turns into SMU, and Chad Morris does his job. So next question. In the current playoff format, how does Notre Dame fit in? If Notre Dame goes undefeated, do they deserve to get in over an undefeated Power 5 conference champ? And, of course, this is all hypothetical. There are not going to be 5 undefeated conference champions, so that's not a conversation that we're going to have this year. But how does Notre Dame fit in to this system? Do they deserve to get in, or should they join a conference? What do y'all think? JB, kick us off.
Well, I'm going to look at this year. I know that there aren't going to be 4, undefeated conference champions. But I mean, Notre Dame, they schedule good opponents. Like they put Michigan on their schedule. They had Stanford on their schedule. Virginia Tech, Navy's legit opponent. I don't care what everybody says. USC usually, Syracuse usually has been a thorn in Dabo's side for the last couple of years, and Florida State is traditionally a juggernaut. So if they look at this year, for example, if Michigan ends up winning the Big Ten and only has 1 loss, and Notre Dame only has 1 loss, well, Notre Dame beat Michigan. I feel like the head-to-head matters in that case. As long as they're scheduling opponents that are actually going to end up in the top 10 and they can get wins on them, then yeah, I see that they're a legit player for those top 4 spots. But if they don't have any big wins and have yeah, I mean, I'm always going to give a conference champion precedent if they're playing a top 10 team at the end of the season. That's kind of like a playoff game, pretty much. So it just depends on who they schedule. That's my input there.
Okay. Well, I think that's ridiculous. Notre Dame needs to join a conference because everybody else has an extra game. They ought to have an extra game. And that extra bye week ends up doing wonders for them, I think. I don't think they deserve to get in until they join a conference. And, come on, how hard would it be for them to officially join the ACC? But at any rate, that's JB's take on it. James, let's hear yours.
Yeah, honestly, I think it should solely depend on strength of schedule. I mean, if they played a tougher schedule than the other undefeated team, then yeah, by all means, let them in. And, I mean, it's only a 14 playoff, so you've got to be pretty selective each year. But I do think, a playoff is a good way to determine the best teams in the nation. And I think if they go undefeated, their strength of schedule is comparable to an undefeated Power 5 champ, or even stronger, they get in and get beat, I think that hurts their chances next season, but I don't see any reason to keep them out. And to speak to them not being in a conference, I mean, Texas A&M is a school steeped in tradition, it's built on tradition, and they've got a sense of family that you can't really explain to people who haven't been there. And I definitely think Notre Dame is very similar. It's a very old school built on tradition, and I think part of that and part of staying unique and keeping their thing is staying outside of a conference. So I wouldn't push them to join a conference, and I wouldn't slight them for not being in one.
Okay. So then would you say that they need to schedule an extra game a year to make up for that? Because let's go back to the year, I believe it was 2012, when Notre Dame played against Alabama for the national championship. And Alabama had played an extra game, and there was doubtless a one-loss conference champion that could have gotten into that game. But Notre Dame gets the nod ahead of the other conference champions and gets absolutely obliterated. So do you see that happening, say, this year? If they get in, do you see them losing to the 1 seed if they get in at number 4?
Honestly, yeah. I mean, Alabama's looking to be the 1 seed. I don't see anything out of Notre Dame that says that they're any better than Alabama or even whoever goes in as the number 2 seed. I mean, they're looking good this season, but I don't foresee them winning it. I will say yes. I do think they could use that extra week to schedule another game to help their chances. And I think moving forward, people would look favorably on that. And I do think it would help their chances.
Okay. JR, let's hear your opinions on that matter, because we're going to solve everything tonight. And you to help us.
Well, I think, okay, the question is, can they? Well, we have seen from the selection committee multiple times that the selection committee will do whatever they want when it comes to putting someone in. The question is, should they? Like, I'm gonna agree with most of the people and say we should go by strength of schedule. Like, if they have a strong schedule and they go undefeated or have one loss, then they should be considered for the spot just like any other team. Like, just this extra, like, to pretend for us to pretend like after last year that conference championship games are play-in games, or what happened to Penn State. I mean that's a foregone conclusion that that's false. So I think they should have a shot, and I don't think they should be in a conference to get that shot. I think we should just look at strength of schedule.
Okay, so I can just go ahead and say that all of you are out of your mind. Rob is not here, out of sight, out of mind. So let's go on to the UCF question, and he can jump in on that when he gets back James, do you have the question pulled up? Because
Yes, I do. The question is, would you like to see UCF play in the playoff? And follow-up, who would you like to see UCF play Game 1 next season to keep all this mess from starting up?
So I would not like to see them play in the playoffs, but if they did, I would love to see them play either Alabama or Clemson, because then we would just prove the fact that they don't deserve to be there, or they would prove everyone wrong. Play the best to, play the best to prove that you can be there with the top dogs. As to next season, I mean, it's already scheduled, but if we were speaking hypothetically, I would say schedule them with Alabama. I mean, they say they want Bama. They don't, but they say they do. They're either the most idiotic, dumb school in the world, and they actually want Bama. They need to be in a psych ward, or they're just saying that because they want media attention, which is what I think it is, because there's no way they can beat Bama. I think Bama would beat them about 85-0 right now.
Okay.
But that's my personal opinion. So, and I'll throw it over to James with all the stats he's got on UCF.
Yeah, I went ahead and pulled up some stats this afternoon to just to put this thing to bed. And if we look at UCF and their strength of schedule, I pulled up both the Football Power Index, which is ESPN's ranking system, and then the S&P Plus ranking system. And the FPI has UCF ranked at 33, and then here's their opponents' ranks and how well they beat them. Their first game was UConn, who is ranked 126 out of 130 teams, and they beat them 56-17. You've got South Carolina State, who is an FCS team. They got 38-0. UNC, they didn't play, but their rank is 79. Florida Atlantic, who is ranked 95, is the game that they've given up the most points in at 36. Pitt is ranked 69. They won that one 45-20. SMU is ranked 99. They won that one 48-20. Memphis ranked 55. That's their highest ranked opponent that they've played thus far, and they only won by 1 point. 55 in the FPI, and they only won by 1 point. They played East Carolina, who was ranked 120 out of 130, and they won that game. And then not yet, they've got Temple, who's 67, Navy, who's 102, and then Cincinnati, who's 53, and USF, who is ranked 70. And USF is also undefeated this season. Now, to go down to the S&P Plus, they're ranked a little bit higher, but their opponents seem to be ranked a little bit lower. They're ranked number 11 in the S&P Plus, which I honestly think is a little bit high, but the ranking criteria is slightly different, and these are stat-based rankings. But their first game, UConn, is ranked dead last, and they have a 1-6 season. I did not look at SC State's record, but their FCS, what more do you need to know? UNC ranked number 90, they're 1-5. FAU number 71, they're 3-4. Pitt number 87 is 3-4. SMU ranked 101 is 3-4. Memphis, their game that they only won by 1 point, is ranked 39 in the S&P Plus, and they're even. East Carolina is 106 at 2-5, and then not yet played Temple is 36 at 5-3. Navy is 100 at 2-5. Cincinnati is 32 at 6-1, and USF is 40 at 7-0. So three of their four toughest games they haven't even played yet, and those are the only ones with winning schedules. Even then, the toughest teams they play only come up to the 30s, and that's in the S&P Plus. So, I mean, as you can see, they've got an absolutely sorry strength of schedule, and if they're not winning out, then there's something wrong with their team. Now, I think if they want to get a little bit more recognition and possibly get into the playoff, they need to ditch SC State over here, the FCS team, and they need to ditch a couple of these other horribly ranked teams, like UConn or whoever they can get rid of in their non-conference play, and beef it up with some Alabamas, some Clemsons. And even if it's not Alabama or Clemson, play some SEC teams like an LSU or an Auburn or a Mississippi State who's got some solid defense, and that'll be a real litmus test. I mean, that'll really, really, show who they really are. And I think if they can win those, then yeah, they deserve to be in the playoff. But until then, they're just screaming and banging on the table for no reason. For their first game next season, yeah, I'd absolutely love to see them play anybody in the SEC West, or even Georgia in the East, or Clemson, or even OU.
I'd say to put Florida on the schedule, man.
Yeah, Florida, OU, I mean, anybody in a Power 5 that's done halfway decent, in the past couple of years, I'd love to see them play just to get a better gauge of how they're doing. Unfortunately, I don't think they're man enough to do that, and they're just going to sit there, play their weak schedule, and scream and cry until they get put in it and shown what's up.
Well, that's all good and well, but I think I'm going to be in the minority opinion here, and shocker. And I'm going to go ahead and say I would like to see UCF in the playoff. They haven't lost a game in 2 years. They did beat Auburn last year, who really was a solid football team. Their only losses came to LSU and Georgia and Alabama. That's a solid resume, and they ended up losing to UCF.
Whoa, we didn't lose to Bama.
Okay, yeah, you're right. We wanted. You're right. So they beat an even stronger team than I was presenting.
They lost to Clemson.
First of all, they beat an Auburn team who had nothing left. They were finished with their season. Half their players were ready to go play. They were just, we didn't make it to we didn't win the SEC championship, and we didn't in the playoffs, so our season's over. That was how they viewed it. They had nothing left to play for. So they had nothing to win and everything to lose by that game.
Okay, that's fair, but when we're all the time barking, okay, they need to play legitimate opponents, let's not delegitimize the wins when they play legitimate opponents. They played a legitimate Auburn team, and they beat a legitimate Auburn team. Mindset,
they were forced to play them. Schedule them, though. Schedule them. They were forced to play them.
Right. And they would have happily rather had played Georgia or Alabama and got into the playoff, right? That you're right. They were forced to play them. But when you haven't lost a game in 2 years, I think it's difficult to keep you out. And like was said earlier, I would like to see the matter settled for once and all. Another thing is scheduling games happens years in advance. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say the schedule for this season and last season have been made probably for 5 or 6 years. And maybe we see a big scheduling change in 3 or 4 years, but I don't see that happening next year. I don't think that's possible. So I would love to see them get in. I would love to see them get creamed. I'd love to see them go ahead and end the argument because I think that they've earned a shot. If you don't lose a game in 2 years, then I don't know what more you can do than beat the teams you're scheduled to play, even if they're ugly wins, right? The Memphis win isn't a great win. They beat FPI 55 team by 1 point, but every team has ugly wins, right? LSU beat Louisiana Tech by like 2 scores, and they're the FPI 82 or 83 team. So every team has ugly wins. Every team has not great weeks. Every team can have weak schedule. And though I will say UCF's schedule is weaker than most. Having said that, they are far and away the best group of 5 team that I have seen.
Well, maybe, yeah, I can't argue that.
So I don't understand why we wouldn't let the group of 5 get in and see what they're missing. Just go ahead, have them play. the number 1 team, have them play the number 2 team, and put the matter to rest. At least then you wouldn't have UCF going around claiming a national championship, Like they had nobody to stop them from doing that because the way the system's set up. I mean, we had 2 SEC teams get in where UCF, who had gone undefeated, beat everybody on their schedule, done everything they needed to do, got snubbed, and it's probably going to happen again this year. So they're going to claim another national title, and it's going to continue to build until it comes to a head. And I say let them in. Let's get this over with and send them on their way.
I would agree with you in that I'd like to see them in there just to see what happens. But I don't think they're going to go undefeated this year. I think they'll lose their conference championship because they're going to they'll play Memphis again and they won't win. So
I don't know. I don't know about that. But okay. I did want to point out the strength of schedule for a couple of teams, and then we'll move on to our predictions for this week. So, UCF's average opponent's FPI ranking to this point in the season, and I'm only counting teams that I could find, so I'm discounting all FCS opponents because I can't really project that. But of their FBS opponents, their Division I FBS opponents, UCF's average opponent in the FPI is ranked 94th in the country, which is astoundingly low, right? It's a terrible schedule. Now, the only team that I did that's close to that, or the closest team that I did to that, let me rephrase, is Alabama, actually. Alabama's average opponent to this point in the season that isn't an FCS opponent has an FPI ranking of 64th. So there's still a discrepancy of 30 places between there. Alabama's weak schedule would be a very strong schedule for UCF. Notre Dame has played a schedule where they are averaging, their opponents are averaged at ranking 53 in the country. Clemson's average opponent is ranked 49. Michigan's average opponent is ranked 48. Florida's average is 47. Texas's is 49. Georgia is 47. And Texas A&M's average opponent is 41. Now, I say all of that to say LSU deserves a spot in the playoff, even if they lose another game, because their average opponent to this point in the season has been ranked 27.8. And their next game is against the number 1 team in the country. So, regardless, I think LSU's strength of schedule speaks for itself. And if, like we've said several times on the podcast, strength of schedule should be the main metric by which we measure these things, LSU should get in as our first 2-loss, even if we drop, which we won't, even if we drop the game against Alabama.
So just so we're clarifying here, are you saying 2-loss if you win the SEC championship game? Or you lose your second game as the SEC championship and then
lose.
Yeah, so I would say probably the most likely scenario that LSU gets in with 2 losses is as conference champ,
okay,
or losing the conference championship rather. I think that game would be the only way that they would be in the conversation with 2 losses. If we drop the one to Alabama, we're out of the conversation for some reason already, because Alabama would then have to, I think, lose out to put LSU in the SEC championship.
So okay, that's why I was clarifying. I don't think that's possible. If you lose 2 games and you don't win the SEC championship, I don't see how you can have a chance.
Right. I could see that. But the strength of schedule, if you factor in Alabama, I think is an average opponent ranked in the top 25. On any given week, LSU's opponent is 25 or higher. So
right. My point in that was if you drop to Alabama and then win the SEC championship, I could see your argument holding up. But the other way, I don't.
Right.
Yeah, it's not mutually exclusive. We're not going by just the strength of schedule or just a win-loss record. It's a combination of the two. Like UCF doesn't have the strength of schedule, but they have the win-loss record. You can't just say, "Oh, we have the best schedule in the nation, our strength of schedule, but we lost 2 games." When there's one-loss teams out there, like that only works out if you're like comparing to people that have like done about the same amount as you have. But
Right.
Well, if LSU was Alabama, like we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. You could win, you could lose your conference, you could lose your division, couldn't not even play for it. We'll put you in.
Yeah.
So if you just change locations, you can get in with 2 losses.
You got a point there.
I don't think Bama would get in with 2 losses.
I think they would get the nod, man. If anybody would with 2 losses, it would be Alabama.
no,
But
if they went 0-12, they would be considered for it. They'd be the first team out.
the hate is strong in here, man. The hate.
I love it.
This is why I'm all for Central Florida going undefeated. I hope they never play another team ever again. I hope they schedule like North Carolina, SMU every year, and then every year claim a national championship. And it's because all those Alabama fans will get on the internet and just lose their mind over some podunk team in Central Florida. And like claiming national championships, like please, Central Florida, win 50 straight games. It's amazing. I love the internet when stuff like that happens.
JR, you are the ultimate Alabama troll. But
yes, I love it.
Out of time for this segment, and actually we've gone over a little bit, so we're going to need to keep our predictions for next week a little bit truncated, a little bit short, and so yeah. The good news is there's not many games for next week. So, JB, we're going to go with your picks for this week. We've got Vanderbilt coming to Arkansas. Who you got?
I got Arkansas.
Hey, that's good to hear. It's the first time in 4 weeks, I think, that you've been able to call Arkansas to win.
No, I picked them last week, and we won.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They did play Tulsa. Okay. Who have you got in the who have you got in the Florida Georgia game?
I got Georgia on that one. I think
Glory.
Yeah, both of them have a week off. Yeah, both of them have a week off, but I feel like Georgia just got their butt woken up, so I feel like they're going to come out hungry. So,
okay. Kentucky goes to Missouri.
Mizzou, man. I think it's their offense is going to be too much for Kentucky to handle. They're going to catch them, and it's at Columbia, so I think it's going to be.
So JB is finally selling the Wildcats. Texas A&M travels to Mississippi State. Who you got in that one?
I got A&M, man. They've been playing some good football, and I continue to not have any faith in Joe Moorhead and the Mississippi State Bulldogs, and I hate cowbell. So let's go.
Okay. Tennessee travels to South Carolina. Who you got in that one?
South Carolina, man. Tennessee's not going to catch lightning twice this year. So no, I got South Carolina on that one.
All right, that's fair. James, who have you got in the Vanderbilt versus Arkansas game?
Woo pig.
Yeah.
Okay. The Florida Georgia game?
That one's going to be a tough one. I've got Florida in a close one. It's hard for me to say that because I do know that Georgia's coming off a loss and they're mad, but they're also coming into the swamp, and Florida has been rolling pretty well this season. So,
actually, that game is in Jacksonville. It's at a neutral site.
Okay,
as it is every year.
I just knew it was in Florida, so I mean.
Well, I mean, Jacksonville could be either. It's kind of both Georgia and Florida. So does that change your pick?
Before you answer, the tickets are split 50-50.
That's true.
All right, I'm gonna keep with my Florida. I mean, I'm a little bit hard headed, and I.
He's getting on Facebook now to change.
No. I'm reading them off on Facebook right now, but no, I'm keeping it Florida. I'm keeping it Florida just because I'm hard headed. I'm probably wrong, but I'm sticking with it.
That's fair. Kentucky travels to Missouri. Who you got in that one?
I got Missouri.
Oh wow, not a lot of faith in Kentucky tonight.
M-I-Z.
All right. Your Aggies travel to Starkville to take on the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Who you got?
I think it's going to be a heavy defensive battle, but I think the Texas A&M defense is going to be able to keep a handle on what's his face, their runner that's run on us every year.
Nick Fitzgerald, maybe.
Yeah, Nick. They're gonna be able to keep Nick contained pretty well. And his passing game has been pretty poor. So I think even our secondary, which I will say has shown market improvements over the past couple weeks, I do think we'll be able to contain the passing game and the run game. I think it's going to be a low-scoring, hard-hitting game, but I think we're going to come out of there on top.
Okay. Tennessee travels to South Carolina. Who you got in that one?
I got South Carolina in that one.
Okay. JR, you want to give us your picks for this week?
Yes.
All right. Who you got in Vanderbilt versus Arkansas?
Arkansas.
Florida, Georgia.
Georgia.
Kentucky, Missouri.
Kentucky.
I like you. Texas A&M and Mississippi State.
A&M.
And Tennessee travels to South Carolina.
South Carolina.
All right. I like that. Short, sweet, and to the point. Rob?
I just picked everyone's hats.
Rob, who you got in Vanderbilt, Arkansas?
I got the Commodore. Sorry, JB.
All right. Florida, Georgia. I purposefully said Florida first every time that I said it.
Yeah, of course. You're wrong, but that's okay. Dogs on top. I got to pick my own boys. I think it's going to be a close one, but
okay. Kentucky and Missouri.
Sorry, Drew Lock. Kentucky.
Hey,
I don't think he's talking about Kentucky. JB was talking about Kentucky can't stop Mizzou. Mizzou doesn't have a freaking defense. Benny Snell's going to run all day on them. Benny Snell, minimum 250 yards.
Ooh, a minimum. Good gravy. Okay. Well, before we get in any street fights, who you got in the Texas A&M versus Mississippi State game?
I got Texas A&M.
All right. Tennessee
because of the punter. Because of the punter.
Absolutely. The punter's the X factor.
The field position
he does
is
everything.
Key factor there.
He does everything.
I couldn't resist.
Tennessee versus South Carolina.
South Carolina. I can't take Tennessee, man. Come on.
That's fair. That's fair. All right. And now for my picks, I will go ahead and say I think that Vanderbilt goes into Arkansas and steals one. I think that's a very close game. But of the two, I think that Vanderbilt is a little bit closer to being there. I think they're probably 3 or 4 years from competing in the East. And, I think that they go in there and they steal one. Then the Florida-Georgia game, I've got Florida winning simply because Florida is so much like LSU. They are built almost identically. They have one of the best defenses in the country and not a great offense. And Georgia seemed to struggle with that. When Jake Fromm is under pressure and has to make quick decisions, he throws interceptions. And if Georgia's running game doesn't get going, it could be a long day for the Bulldogs. Kentucky versus Mizzou, I have got Kentucky winning that one, and I think I don't think it's a close game. I think Kentucky runs all over Missouri. I don't think that 250 yards for a running back is realistic, but I don't think that's a close game.
I exaggerated a little bit, but come on.
Maybe just a tad. But I do think Kentucky wins by a couple scores. In the Texas A&M Mississippi State game, the game is at Starkville. Mississippi State has maybe the second or third best defense in the country. The Cowbells will be going. I don't see Texas A&M surviving, but if they do, good on them. I'm picking Mississippi State in a very close one. because of the home field advantage that they'll have, and because I don't know that Texas A&M has played a defense as solid as Mississippi State's. And I know that Clemson's front four has been this highly lauded front four, like they're the best ever. But I don't think that they were as solid as Mississippi State is on defense. And I don't think Alabama is as solid as they have been historically on defense. So I think this is going to be Texas A&M's biggest test on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm excited to see how that goes. But I do have Mississippi State winning in a close one. I'm agreeing with ESPN that they are favored by 1 point. So Tennessee travels to South Carolina. And, yeah, I can't pick Tennessee either. South Carolina's going to win that one. And it's going to be ugly because Tennessee is Tennessee and they do Tennessee things. All right. And I think that's it for the picks. Anybody got some final remarks for us?
I think we're good.
Solid.
All right. Well, JR, thank you for coming on. I think it's been a fun show. I think we've hit everything that we wanted to hit. We probably said a few things more than we needed to say. We've gone over our time as per the usual. We started late. You'd almost think we were Baptists. The service almost. We get started late, and we end up walking in circles. But I had fun. I don't know about y'all, but it's been fun. And this is going to be a particularly fun Saturday with the Florida-Georgia game happening. And
you just have to do that, don't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely I do. with the Florida-Georgia game happening and with A&M traveling to Starkville, with Arkansas playing Vanderbilt, I think that this might be the closest week that we have this season. Just great matchups all across the board.
All right. So, quick prediction: who are they going to pick on game day tomorrow? Who's the headgear going to?
Are you talking about Corso's pick?
Yeah.
Corso is going to pick Georgia, but Herbstreit is going to pick Florida.
I kind of thought it would be the opposite.
I think Corso is going to pick Florida.
Herbstreit's kind of historically been more on the Georgia train.
Maybe so, but I don't know. Florida just has that.
I just really hope that they don't all pick Georgia. That's like the kiss of death.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly what happened to Miami in week 1 against LSU, and we all saw how that turned out for Miami. JR, I've got to ask you before we sign off, do you have any kids?
I have 0 kids.
Okay, just making sure you didn't baptize your infant babies. Remember, brothers, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. And brothers and sisters, we'll see you in the tavern. Have a good night, and God bless.
All right.